Damichael, I have so many ideas for this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. I want to defend Taylor Jenkins. People in trash and Jenkins all weekend. I want to defend him. We can talk about the Western Conference Finals, the Eastern Conference Finals. It's all set. There's so many awesome things. What?
Joe, I think you've been living under a rock.
What?
Some big news happened with the Grizzlies.
No,
it's about your boy Ja Morant. I'm going to see. Don't worry about it. I'm going to send you a link. Let's just get the show started. Let's kick it off. Let's go.
I guess I need to lock in better. I'm going to watch this during the video. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I know.
I just want to talk about basketball, Michael. That's all I want to do. This is supposed to be a basketball podcast where we discuss basketball things, and we can't even do that. Well, what a Monday way to start off Locked On Grizzlies. I am one of your hosts, Ja Morant, joined by my co-host, Damichael Cole, the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. I am of Bluff City Media, and I thought we were going to discuss basketball today, but it seems that off-the-court issues have once again cropped up for the Memphis Grizzlies. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks has a great offer for first-time users. They can receive a 100% instant discount or deposit match, up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. Again, we are proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube as well. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe. Continue to make us at Locked On Grizzlies a part of your NBA and Memphis Grizzlies experience. And again, I'm genuine. I spent the weekend defending Taylor Jenkins to Michael Cole and how people want to get that guy fired, which we'll talk about Coach Jenkins later on in the program, because I do think there is room to have that discussion of his presence in the franchise with the issue that we'll be discussing today. But I know your Sunday, your Mother's Day, hello Mother's Day, I had to write a nobody cares, but I'm just going to briefly vent. I had to write a news piece in the church parking lot after church on Sunday, while my wife on Mother's Day and my 3 children stared me down. So nobody cares about my plight or your plight, but we had to work on Mother's Day, Damichael, because Ja Morant back in the news late Saturday night, early Sunday morning, video goes viral. He appears to once again be holding a gun. This time it is not his Instagram live video. It is that of a friend. I know you'll talk more about the friend here momentarily, but it is Ja Morant once again, split second, holding a weapon, a firearm it appears to be. And the Memphis Grizzlies have suspended him from all team activities. Now, really quick, people might be saying, well, Memphis got eliminated from the playoffs. What do you mean by team activities? And I'm sure you can elaborate on this too, Damichael. But if he wanted to go work out at FedEx Forum, there's guys that'll get up shots, that sort of thing. Using the facilities, he's not allowed around the team essentially right now in any function is what that means. And again, you can elaborate as well since you're there and you cover the team daily. But that's my understanding of what that suspension is. And it's likely going to become something bigger than that. But we'll talk about that throughout the show. Just general facts you might have. I know, like I said, you had a busy Mother's Day working on this. What do we know as of now, Damichael, especially involving the gentleman whose account Ja was caught waving the pistol, allegedly?
Yeah. Well, the basics pretty much are what you said in terms of the Grizzlies have suspended Ja Morant away from team, activities. That means primarily at this point in the offseason, it's pretty much using the facilities, going to the facilities to work out, get shots up. Ja is pretty much a guy who gets around in the offseason, but Memphis is still his base. So a lot of players, Jaren likes to go out to California, and, Zaire goes back to Southern Cal for a large part sometimes. But with Ja, he's in Memphis more than anywhere else. Of course, he has a lot of endorsement things and opportunities in other places, but Memphis is pretty much his base. So that's kind of a big deal for him, because now in Memphis, he'll probably be working out more at home or other places and gyms and whatnot. that he wants to go to in order to get that work in. But you mentioned the friend situation. There was a conversation being had all the way back in March. You remember, Joe? I think we talked about it, but a lot of people talked about it, right? And it was about Ja Morant's circle. And one of the main names that came up in those conversations was Davonte Pack. Davonte Pack is Ja Morant's very close friend. Ja Morant calls him his brother. I have very close friends that I call my brother. So, you get that. That's how close they are. They do everything pretty much together. They're always together. If you see any videos, Ja, when he's out, Davonte Pack's usually standing to his left or standing to his right. So they're very close friends. Many of you who follow Ja Morant have seen him wear the brand MBNO. I believe it's My Brothers No Others, something like that. And it's basically Davonte Pack's brand. And Ja has helped him, promote it. And Ja is, pretty much a member of that group and whatnot. But here's the thing. This is what it all boils down to, right? Davonte Pack and Ja are very close. They played AAU basketball together in South Carolina. They've been close for a number of years. But let's go through some incidents this season. If you go back to the situation at Ja's home where he, had the situation with the then 17-year-old, now 18-year-old Josh Holloway kid who's going to play college basketball at Samford. Davonte Pack was a part of the Holloways, lawsuit and basically saying he jumped in to help Ja Morant. We don't know if that's, true or not, but it's a part of the lawsuit. Davonte Pack's name comes up there. That's what we're riffing on here, when his name comes up. You remember the situation with the Indiana Pacers? I saw it physically with my own eyes. Davonte Pack, James Johnson were talking across the court to each other, and pretty much he was talking towards the Pacers bench, Davonte Pack, that is. And as he was being escorted from the game, he put his hand up and pointed to the back, as in, meet me in the back after the game. So there was that situation as well. Then there are a number of other instances that come to mind, but none more important than the early morning of March 4th at the Denver nightclub, where Ja Morant has the Instagram live video, and right beside him is Davonte Pack in that video as well. And now we come back to this incident that happened. I think it was late. I mean, it was on Saturday, but, it kind of resurfaced Sunday morning and whatnot on Davonte Pack's Instagram. And it was Ja Morant, right beside him in the Instagram. And you can see he kind of tried to turn the camera over and all that. So I don't necessarily think this is his fault by nature, but you have to point out the facts here. The fact is, a lot of times that Ja Morant has gotten into a situation, he's been right there. And maybe sometimes it's coincidence, but I tell you what, the entire landscape of it is not a coincidence. So I think that's something you have to point out. But here's where I stand, Joe, and then I'd love to hear what you got to say as well. Where I stand is, this is Ja Morant's miss. When the first time, when the March 4th incident, there was a little bit more remorse. Yes, it was a huge mistake, but it was, he's 23. Yeah, he has to work on his mental health. He has to get used to, this pedestal, right? This leadership that's being thrust upon him. And then it was like, hey, he pledged to be better. Remember his last post-game press conference after the Game 6 loss? He was talking about being a leader this offseason. He used the word discipline. Self-discipline is what he was going to work on going into the offseason. He said to pretty much reiterated that in his exit interviews. But guess what? We're here again, Joe. We're here. And to me, now it's like, okay, you can make an argument March 4th. You could make the argument. I don't know if I would, but you could make the argument on March 4th. Hey, he didn't know. He didn't know what came with what he has now. But you can't make that argument after March 4th because a lot of things were almost taken away.
No, you can't. I want to do now, because this was literally 2 weeks ago, right? A little more than 2 weeks ago when this end of season availability happened and we had this conversation. And obviously we were hosting Locked On Grizzlies back in March when all this was going down. I want to make clear, because as an educator, as somebody that works beyond my Grizzlies stuff, mental health issues are very real. And there are people that struggle with that each and every day. And I want to be clear that that is important. 100%. And I think if Ja is enduring that, he needs to seek help more seriously. Now that I've put that out, I am very disappointed that I was one of the ones who gave him that benefit of the doubt, because he clearly is not remorseful, in my opinion. If he was, he would be at the minimum a lot more aware. He's not thinking is the problem here. He's not thinking. That should never have happened. The video, I think it was, and again, I saw it on Sunday morning, and it was like 13 seconds in or something like that. Yep. It was a quick flash. Like, you had to screenshot it. I couldn't see it just watching the video.
Right.
So they told several folks on Twitter said, screenshot it here. And that's what I did. And I saw it. And you know, but you don't care. And you don't think enough about it. And Devontae Pack may be his best friend. And, I know you have best friends that are like that. I have a best friend that's like that. A couple, people that I also call my brother. My kids call them Uncle Dave, right? Or Uncle Charlie. Like, they call them uncle because they are my brother to me. Mm-hmm. If my brother cost me $40 million, I'd be really pissed off at my brother. Mm. And I think that while that's scapegoating, because I agree it's 100% on Ja Morant, the company you keep says a lot about who you are as a person. And I think that has to be the reality right now, because Ja Morant owns all responsibility for this. It's not Devontae Pack who's at risk of losing a shoe deal with Nike. That's extremely popular and could be creating generational wealth for he and his family. It's Ja Morant. It's not Devontae Pack who missed out on a Supermax contract in part because of the actions that occurred during the regular season. It's Ja Morant. So he needs to do some serious soul searching beyond whatever mental health things there may or may not be, and come to the realization that if you are not actively helping me, use this opportunity to put my great grandkids, who I may never see, in a better position because of the work that I'm doing now, then you have to, again, it's not my business. It's his family. It's his life. But if it were me, I'm not hanging out with somebody that you went through the facts. And it's not Damichael Cole saying this, it's Joe Mullinax saying this. You went through the facts. There's a list of things that have happened, and there's one common denominator, technically two. Ja Morant's there, Devontae Pack's there. Devontae Pack doesn't have a $190+ million contract with the Memphis Grizzlies, and I think we can kind of leave it at that for now. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to talk about the idea of a suspension. There was a lot of back and forth on social media on Sunday, Mother's Day. Again, on Mother's Day, this is all happening. Should Ja Morant have a lengthy suspension, 20 games, 40 games, half a season? Damichael and I will talk briefly, because, again, we're still in the beginnings of all this. We'll talk briefly about that next here on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is a remarkable app that continues its $1 million daily Superflex promotion. One entry placed after 8 a.m. Eastern time on PrizePicks will be randomly selected each day. You can win up to $1 million with $80,000 and $16,000 opportunities as well. You can find the full details at prizepicks.com/million. And if you're not familiar with PrizePicks, again, it's a wonderful app, wonderful site where you are picking 2 to 6 players to go more or less than the points they score, assists, rebounds, whatever counting stats there are. You're going against projections. You're not going against other people, and you can win up to 25 times your money. Obviously, the NBA playoffs are now reaching the conference final stage. I wish we were talking more about that. There's other sports, Major League Baseball, PGA, all sorts of different things going on. PrizePicks has it all for you. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with a promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. It's that easy. Don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign-up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Suspension. Again, we should be talking about basketball, and here we are, next here on Locked On Grizzlies. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am one of your hosts, Joe Mullinax, joined by my co-host, Damichael Cole. I am the head of Grizzlies content, written content, I guess, over at Bluff City Media. You can check out Damichael and all the great work he does as the beat writer for the Memphis Grizzlies over at the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. And Damichael, I alluded to it earlier in the show, the idea of a suspension. Obviously, it was time away from the team, in air quotes there, that turned into essentially an 8-game suspension from the NBA. I'm again, it's finding the right way to say this. In terms of discipline, I do not have a ton of respect for Adam Silver as a commissioner. I think he's fairly lenient. And if you listen to numerous NBA people, including Adrian Wojnarowski in the lead up to the Game 7 between the Celtics and 76ers, he alluded to that and how several people specifically, he didn't give sources, but in conversations with Woj, who has all the sources, obviously, he talked about how people were like, 8 games, that's kind of lean. That's kind of lenient. Like, this dude probably broke the law, right?
Yeah. It was pretty much 2 games.
Right. It was basically a 2-game suspension, right? So he's already been called out publicly, at least through these sources, for being lenient with this. Ja clearly is not remorseful, or if he was remorseful, it was more so about the torment that he went through in terms of, possibly losing Nike and all those sorts of things. So now here we sit. Obviously, it's May. The team doesn't convene again in terms of a full camp until September, early October. What do you foresee Memphis doing in terms of, or the league, I guess it would be, the league in terms of a suspension? Again, there's 2 sides to this. On one side, if he was in the state of Tennessee, we can debate gun rights versus gun restriction versus gun law all you want. That's not the place for this podcast. In Tennessee, it is an open carry, open policy. There are pictures of people with guns all over the state of Tennessee out in public. So there's that side of the argument. And then there's the other side, which, is kind of where I'm leaning, that the NBA is a publicly involved situation where billions of dollars are tied up. It's a little bit different than, if you or I wanted to go out there and just carry around a gun. Yeah. And again, he is he has had past transgressions. He's had issues with this in the past. And again, the lack of remorse, that is where the line is for me. It's not necessarily that he's done this again as much as it's, it's 2 weeks after the season, all the things that he said, the Jalen Rose interview. And at the time, some people said it was a show, right? It was just a PR stunt. And again, shame on me for trying to believe that this was a young guy that made a mistake, because it looks like those folks were right.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, right? And here's the thing, I am not trying to put myself in Ja's shoes in any way when I say this. Just want to give a relative perspective here on what you just mentioned. You're talking about, because I know a lot of people will say, hey, he had a gun in a video. What's the big deal? But it's an optics standpoint here. This is more about optics. This is more about the position that he has as one of the faces of the NBA. We often talk about the good things that come with getting a $190 million contract. Well, guess what? There's an image perspective of that's affected too, that some players like it. Some players can handle it. I think LeBron James has handled it pretty well. And some players, like Ja, self-admittedly, has struggled with certain things that come with that so-said territory. And I think about even myself as a journalist. If I were to ride around with one of my friends on Instagram Live and pull out, a gun in the video, my friends would get on me about that. And they wouldn't let me do that, quite frankly. And again, that goes to not only just the people around you, but there's also has to be some self-awareness there from Ja as well. But here's the thing, when we talk about a suspension, the league with Adam Silver, you talk about the leniency that he's given, historically speaking. I think David Stern was actually trending on Twitter yesterday, because people know Stern didn't play that. I mean, he was borderline, with the
draconian.
Yeah, exactly.
Ja Morant would be suspended at least half of the 2023-2024 season if David Stern were the NBA commissioner.
But the one thing about this league office that we have to remember, the only time they're not lenient, pretty much, they don't play about repeat offenders. We just saw Draymond get, a 1-game suspension in the playoffs, in the middle of a heightened series against the Sacramento Kings, and Joe Dumars went on ESPN and basically said it's because Draymond has a history. Well, guess what? Now, after that first incident on March 4th, Ja Morant officially has a history. And those things do tend to come into play. I think when we're talking about Ja's case, that's the sad, truthfulness about this situation is that can come into play. They're not going to completely dismiss that situation and this situation as two completely different things. They're going to link them together. And you know what else they're going to think about? They're going to think about, again, Woj pretty much touched on this, but I thought about it as well. It's one of those situations. I mean, you as a teacher, you can relate, Joe, to the fact you brought someone into your office. He came all the way down to the league office. You took the time to sit down with him. It was Joe Dumars was in that room. There were several other high prominent people in the NBA league office sat in as Ja Morant and Adam Silver and Dumars and the rest of those people had a very tough conversation about Ja's position in the NBA and where he goes from here. Now, the fact that he has this situation come up, I don't think any of them are happy at all. Not just unhappy. I think, quite frankly, it's an embarrassment to, the fact that they were a little bit lenient with the suspension, because I think some of that leniency comes from belief. Hey, he'll be fine. We just have to have a talk with him. Don't hit him too hard with this because he has to figure it out. But at the end of the day, here's the thing. Repeat offenders don't get too much of a break. And that's where it comes into play. I think there's a very real chance that Ja Morant is suspended at the beginning of next season. And
again, we'll have plenty of time to talk about this. I think it's at least double digits. I think it's at least 10 games.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, after
probably closer to 20. Yeah. If it was David Stern, it would be half the season. I believe that in my heart of hearts after watching the David Stern NBA and growing up on it. I think that Silver is not that by any stretch of the imagination. And if he tried to be, I think he'd lose the respect of a lot of the players in the league and the relationship. Obviously, the new CBA just got signed, so they don't have to worry about labor negotiations anytime soon. But I do believe that there would create tension if he tried to be something that he's not now. I do think that there will be a larger suspension. We'll have subsequent episodes of Locked On Grizzlies where we can talk about what does that mean for Tyus Jones, because he's been one of the guys we've said he's the most tradable asset. If Ja Morant is now going to be out for a quarter of your season,
it's a conversation.
What do you do? Do you keep Tyus? How do you improve this team with that no longer really being an option? And then, of course, if we really want to go off the rails, which I'm not even going to say it out loud, but there might be a random Tuesday in June or July that people log on to Locked On Grizzlies and they, what in the world is that headline? We're not going to get there just yet. But I do believe that there's going to be consequences for this, and there should be. Again, legality is one thing. What happens in a court of law is one thing. The court of public opinion is a lot more significant when it comes to the National Basketball Association, at least in terms of the bottom line, dollars and cents, and the emotion of being embarrassed. And I think that the league office should feel embarrassed because they're in a much more prominent and powerful position than me, but they're like me. They gave the young guy the benefit of the doubt, and that's blown up in their face all over Instagram Live. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to talk about how the organization should perceive Ja moving forward. Teammates, what role Zach Kleiman and Taylor Jenkins have in all this. We could probably do an entire episode on the latter, but we're going to do a brief overview of how the Grizzlies themselves should see Ja coming out of this second transgression. Obviously, there were multiple things before this, but in terms of the Instagram Live holding a gun, what comes next with his teammates and others within the Memphis Grizzlies? You're watching listening to Locked On Grizzlies. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I'm Joe Mullinax, co-host of Bluff City Media, joined by Damichael Cole with the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. Make sure you're following his work at Damichael C. Subscribe to the Commercial Appeal. Make sure you're subscribed to Bluff City Media. Between myself, Damichael, the publication, website, things that we work for, and of course, Locked On Grizzlies, we've got you covered all off season long when it comes to Grizzlies content. And again, fingers crossed we can talk about basketball on Tuesday, Damichael.
Fingers crossed.
But we're finishing up our Monday edition of the show talking about how the franchise reacts around Ja, because before the show started recording, you mentioned, the teammates, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane's off taking pictures with the Cal Bridges. That's one of the things I want to talk about.
That's what we should have been talking about, right?
Hello. Yes, that'd be fantastic. But at the same time, now we're looking at a situation where how's Bane going to respond to this? How's Jaren going to respond to this? In the past, they've said, oh, we're all with Ja. We want Ja to get better. We want to help him out. Again, maybe that was the PR savvy, don't say too much kind of line of thinking. But this is the second time that one of those key pillars of the Memphis Grizzlies moving forward, arguably the most important pillar of the Grizzlies moving forward, has done something that directly impacts their stated goal of competing for a championship. It makes him, Ja Morant, look extremely unserious every time he says that. If he really cared about that, he would not be doing the things that he's doing. So assuming that Desmond Bane seriously cares, and assuming that Jaren Jackson Jr. still seriously cares, and we have no evidence to suggest that they don't, and they back it up in their work and all the things they do, how do these players, how do they respond? I'm curious as to how Taylor Jenkins interacts with all this, Zach Kleiman, and again, we're towards the end of our show here. We had a lot that we can unpack, but just how the Grizzlies moving forward perceive and interact with Ja after that trust was kind of broken again.
Yeah. So I'm going to touch on two quick hitters here.
Okay.
And I want to start with Taylor Jenkins. And I'm going to start with a story that's not related to Taylor Jenkins, but you'll get the correlation.
Okay.
There was a moment, I think it was, was it 2016 when Ty Lue took over or for David Blatt, those Cavs teams, 2015, 2016. I think it was 2016. Right. He won the championship when he took over. There was a moment that a lot of people highlight from that team. I think they were in the huddle, and Ty Lue was talking, and LeBron James was talking at the same time. And Ty Lue, early in his coaching tenure with the Cavaliers, turned to LeBron James and told him, shut the expletive up. And that was a tone setter because that's LeBron James. And yeah, you're the coach, but we've heard the stories about LeBron James and coaches and nothing factual, but just the jokes, I guess, about how LeBron is pretty much the coach and things like that. But
LeBron's the best GM in the NBA.
Yeah, there we go. So, but the point here is, do you think Taylor Jenkins, he and Ty Lue are two different personalities. It doesn't have to be, said in that same way.
And Ty Lue is a former player, which is extremely important in terms of that relationship.
Yeah, that is very important. But I feel like the point I'm making there is he – I know he's holding Ja Morant accountable on the floor, but is there that same accountability to the mistakes? Ja, that's stupid. Ja, what are you doing? It has to be that too. That's pretty much my point there. But getting to the players, Desmond Bane. I've always said it, and I've written about it. Desmond Bane is the most natural leader left on this team.
Agreed.
And it's because, again, there's so many factors here. I think about when, the Grizzlies are struggling, and Ja Morant skips media, or Dylan Brooks skips media. Desmond Bane is going to sit right there. I've seen games Desmond Bane shoot 3 of 16, and he's still the same even kill guy after the game. But he has that confidence and that swagger that says, hey, we're going to get better for this. I've seen times where other teammates have been down. Zaire Williams, towel draped over his head down in the locker room, doesn't want to really talk to anybody. And everybody's just walking past him. And then there's Desmond Bane. Z, lift your head up. He's a natural leader. He is the guy that's best positioned on this team to not only say something to Ja and prove it with the words, but guess what? He can hoop too. He averaged 21, pretty much 5 and 5, and on a bad foot. So there's that perspective of, I'm going to tell you to do this, but I can do it a little bit myself as well. And I think now this kind of, I won't say pressure, but it puts more of the emphasis on the fact that Desmond Bane, yes, it's only going to be year 4 for him, but he has to be more of that leader. And the reason I'm emphasizing Des more than Jaren, because I think Jaren is becoming that leader as well. But Jaren, to me, this is my opinion, isn't more of the natural leader that Desmond Bane is. Remember, I've heard stories where guys like Dylan Brooks, guys like Desmond Bane, they have to tell, Jaren, we want you to be more of a dog. We want you to be, more of that guy. You don't got to tell Desmond Bane to be more of a dog. It's naturally there. But at the same time, Jaren tenfold has improved drastically with his communication on the court. He has all the leadership skills from that standpoint. But I think a situation like this is when you need Desmond Bane to be that guy who can kind of carry this team through the offseason, we talk about the Grizzlies having a group chat, can be the guy in the group chat, say, Ja, get it together. We need you. You can't do this anymore. I mean, you can't make these mistakes because it reflects on us as well. He can be that guy.
It definitely reflects on the Memphis Grizzlies. I can tell you that as someone who follows Memphis from afar.
Yep.
The Grizzlies, and we've talked about this on the show before, they were the ESPN darling. It was Memphis Grizzlies Day on ESPN. They have gone from the plucky, lovable, Grizzlies are going to be the next great team to everybody outside of Memphis either is, glad they lost to they hate the Memphis Grizzlies now. It's been a pretty dramatic heel turn. And, when Ja Morant does stuff like this, you could say it's not fair to judge the whole team that way. But again, we mentioned it earlier in the show. Perception's reality. The court of public opinion. Ja Morant is the leader of the Memphis Grizzlies. All the reasons you just gave for Desmond being that guy are 100% true. But Desmond doesn't have a 5-year, $191 million contract extension and a new shoe with Nike and all of these other things. Ja Morant's the one that's the perceived leader of the franchise, and he is not doing that right now for these Grizzlies. I'll finish my thoughts with what you said about Taylor Jenkins, because I do think it's important that he and Zach Kleiman, the GM of the Grizzlies, in the absence of an active owner, right? And I want to stress that that's historically a good thing, right? Robert Pera in the background. He's very good at letting his guys do their jobs. He's not Mark Cuban on the sideline. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I still prefer this. I want to stress that. Zach Kleiman and Taylor Jenkins bear some responsibility in this. It's on Kleiman and the tripling down on youth. It's on Taylor Jenkins and not using the credit that he should have built with this team. Because I remember, Damichael, and I know you do as well, even if though you weren't covering the team yet, in the bubble, when everything was going on with George Floyd and how active Taylor Jenkins was in the conversations he was having with his predominantly African-American team and how they were angry. And he was trying to learn. And he was very vulnerable in those conversations and saying, I'm trying to learn from these guys. I'm trying to develop relationships with these guys. Why are they so mad? He was openly acknowledging that he was trying to learn and have empathy. And to me, those are very significant when you're developing a relationship with one of your players. You're not a player to coach. You're person to person. You're trying to be a friend. All that stuff that he's done to bring it up here. My point is he should have a relationship with these guys. He should be able to be in a place, even though he never played a minute in the NBA. He should be able to go to Ja and say, Ja, shut the up. Ja, what are you doing? Why are you doing this to us? We built something and you're not helping. You're in the opposite direction. You're tearing it down right now. Why? He should be able to have those conversations, and maybe he is. But so much of what we see, and again, perception's reality. So much of what we see is Adam Silver, Taylor Jenkins, a passiveness. It's perceived allowing the players to have the ultimate say. And when you're in that situation and they're making that mistake, nobody is able to step in on the organizational level and say enough is enough. So whether it's a player, whether it's a coach, whether it is, the general manager, the organization, there has to be a step somewhere where someone comes down hard on this, because it doesn't feel like, and again, that might be completely ignorant. You know more about the inner workings of the organization than me. Especially Jenkins, who is with these guys for 6 months out of the year, seeing them more than he sees his own kids and his own wife. Yeah. He should have the relationship at this point. And again, I'm trying to give him credit for what happened in the bubble and all of those things. Mm-hmm. He gave genuine effort. At least I perceived it that way, covering the team. And you should be able to have a conversation with your star player that this can't happen. And clearly that hasn't happened, or at least not effectively enough.
Yeah, he's talked about accountability in the past, but here's the thing that's really stood out to me, where you have to double down on that accountability and kind of approach it more direct this time around, because what we saw, you mentioned it earlier, the language in the first, Ja was stepping away from the team when it should have been.
It's very direct. Clearly a suspension.
Yeah, it should have been that direct. And I get it. You want, it kind of felt like a slap on the wrist. They were babying Ja in a way through that process. Well, guess what? Now you got to approach this a little bit different. And you said it perfectly. Taylor Jenkins has that relationship. And they said things like, in that last situation, things came to a head. But if you go back and listen to the exit interviews, you go back and listen to what Ja said after Game 6, you go back, just listen to Taylor Jenkins talk about how proud he is of how far Ja's come, in this past time. People, around the organization have kind of basically said things to me like, Ja, I mean, the way he's improved, people in the organization were very ecstatic about his progress over the last 2 months. Ecstatic. They were happy. They were happy with the progress that he's shown in the past 2 months. And for this to happen, it's a big slap in the face to all of them.
So Taylor Jenkins, Zach Kleiman, all these other people that are around him far more, know him far better than me, also feeling the embarrassment of having this guy's back and it just not being reciprocated. And again, I want to end our show here with the understanding that, and Damichael hasn't been saying this, it's been me. What I think, aside from my wonderful listeners and viewers here on Locked On Grizzlies and all the writing I do, it's about Ja Morant here, right? Mm-hmm. Like, he could give a damn less, pardon my language, if Joe Mullinax is disappointed in him, right? He could care less if Damichael Cole or anybody else is disappointed in him, more than likely. Okay. But at the end of the day, as I wrote when all of this happened at the first time, all this went down, at the end of his life, Ja Morant is going to be the one person that's sure as heck going to be there, right? Mm-hmm. He is going to be there. And when he takes his last breath, he's going to be the one that has to reflect on what he did. And right now, he is on a path that is not conducive to where somebody, not just of his stature, but somebody of his status as a father, as a leader of his family, he is not where he needs to be. And if it's genuinely mental health, then he needs to go to a treatment facility and stay there longer than 48, 72, 96 hours. Yeah. If it's genuinely alcohol, there's all sorts of theories and things like that, and I know nothing. So I'm not going to, whatever the issue is, now is the time to address it, because he is getting dangerously close to taking away the opportunity that only 0.0001 of the civilization that walks this earth gets a chance to do. And that is have generational wealth. I can't stress that enough. There's a difference between being somebody like Kyle Anderson, DeAnthony Melton, guys that we've talked about recently on this show, that they're going to make millions of dollars, but even millions of dollars in 2023, it can go.
Yeah.
We're talking the capacity to make billions of dollars. That is what's in front of Ja Morant, potentially. LeBron James, that type of money. Michael Jordan, that type of money. Mm-hmm. Dudes sitting around and saying, you know what? When I'm done being a basketball player, I'm going to be an owner, a governor of an organization. That is what's on the table for the type of player, the type of athlete, the type of star that Ja can be. And he is very close to pissing that away. So I hope that he gets what he needs to get, because this is, beyond embarrassing for any of us. It's embarrassing for him. And at the end of the day, that's what's most important. On Tuesday's episode of Locked On Grizzlies, hopefully we can actually discuss basketball. That would be nice. There's a Western Conference and Eastern Conference finals now. Maybe we can focus on other ways that the Grizzlies can improve in the offseason. But I'm sure there will be some Ja Morant fallout that will also be included in our Tuesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Thank you again, wherever you're listening, however you're watching, YouTube, like, comment, rate, review, subscribe, wherever you get your podcasts. We are proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, and we are very grateful that you are an everyday, or hopefully checking out Damichael and I here on Locked On Grizzlies each and every day. For my wonderful co-host, Damichael Cole, I am Joe Mullinax. We will catch you on Tuesday. Stay locked in. This is Locked On Grizzlies.